Yo, what is going on, people? Welcome to Throw Down Your Questions, episode 423. I'm your host, Tony Polanco, and tonight I'm joined by Emilio Lopez,
Sup, people? How's it going?
Carlos Romero,
Yo, yo, yo.
Adam Vale,
How you doing? How you doing?
Brett Murdoch,
What's up, people?
and Brian Manjoma.
What up, what up?
All right, people, we're back with another one. No need to hesitate. Let's get into it. We got Jay Shep in the house, man. By the way, shout out to Jay Shep. He said he was feeling a little bit under the weather, so he's not going to be joining us live. So we hope you have a speedy recovery, and we hope you enjoy this episode, sir.
Yeah, that's all good, man. We'll be here.
Yeah. Give a shout out to Jay Shep, man. He's one of the regulars in the chat. Good stuff. All right, first question here. At PlayStation State of Play, Baldur's Gate 3 was announced for PlayStation and PC. Fanboys began verbally attacking Larian Studios on social media and accusing Sony of paying for exclusivity before being informed that Xbox hardware is the reason why Baldur's Gate 3 hasn't been announced for Xbox. Those same fanboys say the reason is lack of transparency, and yet they won't call Xbox out on its own lack of transparency. On one hand, the Xbox Series S may have had a huge hand in Xbox seeing a lot of console sales. On the other hand, it could be holding this generation back in regard to third-party games. My question is, was the Series S ultimately a bad decision by Xbox? If you've been listening, you go first. You go first.
Well, no, I just want to say at the front, it's like, God damn, man, you got in front of me. You on top of shit. I was actually thinking about this earlier today. I'm not too big to admit when I'm wrong. I kind of popped off at the last podcast about exactly this. Then I came to find out, like a dumbass, system issues. There were system hardware issues that was holding Microsoft back. So, in fairness, I just want to eat my crow on air and say I was fucking wrong, man.
Yeah. And listen, man, when we fuck up on Throwdown, we will admit it. Just like I was extremely fucking wrong about the Switch sales. I thought the show was going to sell 4 million lifetime and die. Boy, was I fucking wrong. You know, Adam, you're gonna say something real quick before we?
I don't know. What was his question? It seemed like it was like two parts.
Yeah, I guess he was just using the Baldur's Gate 3 situation to frame it. Basically, when the game was announced, it was announced for coming to PlayStation and PC, right? And then, Xbox fanboys got all mad that they're saying, "Oh, Sony paid for exclusivity," but then it comes to find out, and I'm just learning this from the question, that the reason it's not on Xbox is because the game couldn't run on the Series S.
Yeah, it's holding it back. So his question then is, was the Series S a poor decision because it's holding back games due to parity? I think it's the basic question.
I guess they're having some issues. They didn't know. Yeah, but I guess, it's having some...
Was it a bad idea? I would say on the one end, as far as if people just want a way to get into get the FOMO, and don't care too much, want to play those games and want to really get it, like, it is definitely a viable option. But I feel like that version of the console is also very much geared toward non-gamers. Like not non-gamers, but like surface level sort of gamers, like
we used to call them casual back in my day.
We used to call them casual, whatever, like, in other words, like, this is like, if again, little Jimmy wants an Xbox, okay, get him the new Xbox, but it's the cheap one.
It's still called casual. People still call them casual.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's a budget. It's a budget console. And
the Series S is the console that, and I've heard this a lot of times, anecdotal, obviously, that gamers get for their kids. It's like, oh, you get this one instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
Do we know that it's the Series S? Because is the game coming out for PlayStation 4? Is my question. Because if it's coming out for PlayStation 4, the Series S has more power than the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, that's somebody look that up, please. Again, for the sake of consistency, I've been saying, again, this is why I love being on Throwdown. Everything we say is recorded. I've said from the jump, the Series S was a mistake, and it's a GIMP system and should never have been released. And this is exactly why. You get games. Again, listen, this is the same reason I have a problem with the Switch. It's dated fucking hardware. Maybe not dated in this case, it's just underpowered, but I don't think that's good for gaming in general. If you're going to release a new console, it should be more powerful. It should be really next gen. So I've been consistent about this from jump. I've been against this console from day one. This is just more proof of it. But at the same time, just being fair, it is selling a lot. So that's what Microsoft wanted. So I understand that. Great. I'm just saying, me as a gamer, I think, and again, I've said this from the jump. This console is a piece of trash.
Well, it's still better than the Xbox One. That's the thing. So if it's considered an upgrade, it is. Yeah, it's just not the Series X. The Series X is that next gen one, but this one also plays those next gen, but it's not as good. But it's better than what you had. It's that in between.
Yeah, it is. But
it's priced and put in that spot. It's in between.
Yeah, no, it is. But again, I'm probably just saying this as me. I'm like, I would rather have the full thing than a half.
Well, you would. Yeah. But if I have like small kids and I don't want to spend the $5 or $6, I couldn't, like, you see everybody having trouble finding the mother one, but you can find a little white cheap one. Then you go with that one, and the kids are happy because they could play the Series X games, the newer games that are not working on the Xbox One.
You buy the cheap console, get Xbox Game Pass.
Just for that, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Brett, just doing a cursory thing. It looks like Baldur's Gate 3 is only on PS5, no PS4 version.
Okay, well then, I think that we have.
It's on fucking Mac. That's crazy,
dude. I could go off about. I've watched a whole thing about Mac PCs, and there's a lot there. Actually, I'd like to have a talk about x86 architecture at some point. But aside from that, I think this is a pretty clear-cut instance of them having trouble getting it down to be able to fit on the system. Because I know Baldur's Gate 3, it's not a card crusher, but man, it's not easy to run, and that's kind of been one of the things they've been trying to optimize it because the system requirements have been a little hefty for their general audience. So I know for a fact that they've been focusing on optimization. And this is kind of...
Are you not surprised? Like, I've seen gameplay, and I'm like, all right, whatever. I mean, there's plenty of other games that look more intense,
it's
even
not
as
about
Diablo. And it's like, what the hell is it that makes it so special?
Here's the thing.
Choice, Adam. It is choice.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, it's not about graphics, Adam, because I agree with you. Graphically, it's not that intensive, but the game has so many choices, so many different ways for you to do things, so many different outcomes. There's a lot of things. Exactly. Just like Fallout. Fallout games don't look that great, but they eat up a lot of fucking memory. There's a lot of things going on in the background the game needs to take into account. So you make a choice, it changes things, and the game has to keep that in mind. So that's basically what it is. It's not about graphics,
All right. I was gonna say
this is actually a great example when I talk about how games need to be more than just more shiny, right? Like, and when I'm talking about our systems, they have great GPUs, but not the best CPUs.
Yeah.
Their brains are not the strongest, and this is the kind of thing where we see that problem coming up. We don't see it, and I'm going to get hate for this, in God of War or Last of Us or things like that, heavily cinematic games that stay on the rails. We don't see this kind of shit. But because they don't take up a lot of memory. They just need to be pretty. They don't need to remember a whole lot going on. There's 5 enemies and a guy with an axe. Done.
Yeah, and Brett, just to even emphasize your point, right? Why do you think racing games look the best? Because all you have to do is just lead the car down the track. That's it. You don't need to worry about an open world or anything. The more shit you have going on in the background, it's going to affect the overall game, right? So you're right about that. That's why God of War and Horizon look as good as they do, because there's not too much going on. Even though those games, more Horizon than God of War, even though they're big open world games and stuff, there's not a lot going on, right? Racing games, they consistently look the best for a reason. It's just a fucking car. There's nothing beyond what you see,
Exactly.
So I just wanted to emphasize your point. Go on.
Well, just that these kinds of games, they're hard to run, but these are the kind of games, honestly, I would want to see more of. I want to see more choice. I want to see more destructible environment. I want to see me be able to affect the trajectory of my game. If you're going to give me an open world, don't give me a fake open world. Give me a world that I can interact with. But we're kind of held back on this, and this is, in my opinion, a perfect example, because we hit that sweet spot where it's just barely managing to get on consoles, right? And that I think is important, because we're still fairly early in the generation, right? You're not going to be able to make a sequel.
We're halfway through.
Yeah, we're going on 3 years now, man. It's crazy.
That's even worse, man, because they're going to upgrade hardware to run a theoretical sequel to this, right? Like, you can't go more than this game has gone, which means we have already hit the end of the tracks, right? It just doesn't go fast. It just doesn't go further from here.
Yeah.
We can't do more than this right now on our hardware. And I think that really highlights a problem with the hardware in the sense of what it can do and what it can't do. And if you think this doesn't affect the development of games, your head is in the sand.
It's unfortunate. Like, you know, what was it? The new Tecmo Koei Monster Hunter game. That game is also affected
Wild
too.
Hearts, right?
It's Wild Hearts it's running at 30 FPS and stuff like that. It's not running amazingly.
Do we know if remember the whole Gotham Knights issue where it couldn't play on the older ones? Is that also, does that work on the Series S? I don't even know.
I think it was on the Series X, but I don't know.
I know it's on the Series X. I just don't know if it worked on the S.
I don't know.
But okay, to tie back to the original question, because I think there was a lot in the original question, but the question directly asked was the Series S a mistake?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, this is not a good look, and it really begs the question, like, where do you go from here? Do you have certain games that you gate off and it's only on the Series X? That's going to upset a lot of your Series S owners, man.
It's a mistake if somebody sues. If someone says, hey, I bought this next gen, and now this next gen game came out, and I can't play it. You're telling me that it only works on the other next gens.
Well, it's difficult.
An issue.
It's difficult to tell for Xbox because most of their first-party games haven't been graphically intensive ones.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, well, no. It'll only, I was going to say, it was like the workaround would be to play it through xCloud, but Baldur's Gate, that probably, you have to buy that. I don't think that's going to be on Game Pass.
I think that's what they're going to have to do. Like, they're going to have to find a way to upgrade or bridge the weaknesses of the Series S. You can do that one of two ways, digitally or physically, right? You can sell us a little Sega Power of Tower upgrade for the Xbox Series S. You want to drop another $100 so you can play these premium games, or really find a way to beef up your streaming services so that they can be streaming these games, which might not be a bad idea in the long run because you really get the idea of streaming into people's living rooms, get your foot in the door if it works right. So it's not all doom and gloom, but
you know what I didn't know? I just found this out last weekend. I didn't know that if you had an Xbox One, right, the Xbox One, the OG, the launch one, and you still had Game Pass Ultimate, that streaming feature works on it. Because I have a buddy of mine who's playing all the newer games. I thought that only worked for older games. I didn't know the Xbox One, the OG one from 2014, could do all of the streaming.
That's part of Microsoft's whole, not leaving anybody behind thing.
Yeah, no one left behind.
Definitely no one left behind. He has no incentive now to upgrade because he was like, I'll just play all of the first ones in streaming. They'll all be streaming. So all right, whatever.
All right, let's move on because we got a lot of questions tonight. Next up,
go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Slight context. To answer the question, I don't think it's a mistake because it's selling better than the other one. So I don't see how you can see it as a mistake from that point of view. Is it a mistake in terms of developers and how they don't like it? Depends who you ask. So I was doing some research just now as to why Baldur's Gate won't be launching on Xbox at the same time, and they say, and this is from Larian, and I've seen that they made this on the Reddit post. Okay, cool, Brett's back. The reason why it won't be on launch day is that they're having issues running the split screen on both Xboxes to a good degree, and that's the main issue at the moment. So is it a case of they could just do it without the split screen? It sounds like it, but it seems like they want the split screen as well, and hence why you're getting this issue. So take things from there. But again, in all honesty, I don't think the Series S is a mistake for Microsoft. It's maybe one of the smarter things they've done, because then it means that they have a lower entry platform that can sell and they can get out there. And ultimately, that's what you want as a business. You want something that's low entry, that you can sell a lot and you can make a lot.
Yep. That's exactly. I mean,
from a business standpoint, it makes absolute sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's right. I don't think it's going to be an issue unless it becomes a pattern.
Yeah.
And this could be something isolated to just, like as Brian said, and an issue with this type of game and this type of, like, it could be a very isolated issue. We don't know. If this continues to be an issue, continues to be a thing, then you come to a possible brand damage thing, but then it's only a brand damage if they handle it. Like, there's so many forks in the road to get to the apocalypse that I don't really think it's worth bringing up right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right, let's move on here. Another one from Mr. J. Shep. I don't fully understand the issues regarding why certain games run better on one console and not another. The recently released Atomic Heart supposedly runs better on PS5 than Xbox Series X, but on paper, the Series X is more powerful. I see silly posts like Sony paid to have it run worse on Xbox, but I don't know if that's true. Could you guys explain why third-party games don't run equally across platforms?
It's just when they do the compiling, when they put things together. It's not a power thing, it's optimization. It's just poor optimization. I saw the same reports, people showing comparisons. It's just poorly optimized. I mean, we see this with all kinds of games. Dead Space Remake runs better on the Series X and not on the PS5. A few other games work better on the PS5 than on the Series X. It comes down to optimization.
Yeah, and the other thing is that I would definitely also say that there is also a target console sometimes when it comes to these things, and it may mean that some APIs are a little easier to be used than others. So maybe that's the sort of situation we're seeing. Also, both consoles, despite them using the same, pretty much the same sort of hardware, there are some differences, like where Sony has their little decompiling of HD stuff. Like in other words, they can quickly decompile textures and and all kinds of other things.
They're using different graphic cards, right?
No, I think they're both AMD.
They're on the x86. They're all up, but
they're on x86. But I think they're both using AMD, as far as I know.
They're both using AMD,
okay.
So they're not too far from each other. It's just, as I remember, the Xbox has a lot more CPU power. That's why you will see more full-on 4K games on there.
What was the thing?
Remember, we talked about that. It's like
cores or something like that. It was 16 cores.
Like the main difference, if I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that Xbox, graphically is more powerful, but PlayStation 5 is faster. That's what I understand.
Yeah. The memory is definitely faster. I've done comparisons with the same game booting up, and it took a lot.
Yeah, they also have SSD.
Go ahead.
They also the other thing is that they can a lot of the quality as far as texturing is a little bit higher on the PlayStation because they can decompile they can have more uncompressed stuff. But the downside is that yes, they may have really high resolution textures, but sometimes they can't push out an image that's in the 4K range.
Yeah, I want to jump on something you said just to give some context here. They're like in the past specifically, you would have a lead console to make the game that they would make the game on, and then port it over to the other one. But that's not really prevalent as much because now they just make the game on PC and then port it over for the most part, just because everything runs on the same architecture. I remember with Bayonetta specifically, right? It ran like crap on PS3, right? So what Platinum did, because they knew the PS3 was harder to develop for, they made their next game starting on PS3, then ported over to Xbox because it was easier to work on Xbox because it was, the cell architecture just fucked everything up. So that isn't as prevalent now, but like you said, there are still differences within the consoles, and those differences are gonna, showcase some of the flaws or whatever, So that's why you're still seeing that.
It's a difference in philosophy, and I'm not gonna say like one necessarily works better than the other. They're very different. Sony really bet on fast memory recall. They're able to pull up and decompile things at lightning fast speed because they sunk a lot of the proverbial money into the SSDs. Microsoft put theirs kind of in the processor, so it's one of those. Sometimes having a bigger brain is going to be more advantageous. Sometimes having quicker recall is going to be more advantageous. But for the most part, it kind of evens out. And you see things like this. Like, here's the other thing. I love Larian Studios, but I don't think they're the most optimized, efficient coding developers ever. Right? Like, they make fantastic games. There's probably some junk code in there that kind of bloats up the games. It's kind of been my experience with their other games, but it's just because these types of games and they're systems. So you have to build one system on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, and then you find out there's something slightly wrong with the bottom system. We're just going to tweak it. We're not going to dig up the whole thing and start again. So it's just the difference why sometimes things run better on PC, sometimes things run worse on PC. It's I hate to say it like this, it's just suboptimal coding is really what it is. Something snuck through, really shouldn't have snuck through, or they should have done something a different way. And it is what it is, man.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this?
I'm sorry, Larry, and I love you.
If you're listening.
Yeah. All right. Moving on here to Meke, who's also joining us tonight in the chat. All right. First question here. I've noticed that the last few publisher/platform shows that the only games that seem to garner the hype and excitement from the core gamers are the ones that tick those quote-unquote next-gen boxes of fancy graphics and lighting, etc. He goes, before Tony starts, yes, Nintendo games and fans are different. Let's just focus on next-gen consoles. Fair enough. AAA games with huge budgets usually draw the most attention, whereas smaller but potentially better games are overshadowed. Is this a bad attitude for the gaming industry to have? Here's the thing. This is basic human nature. People tend to gravitate towards something that's more graphically intensive than more stylized stuff. I'm talking about generally, not for everybody, generally speaking. This is why back in the day, Final Fantasy VII was so big. No one has seen a game that looked like that before. And then
they didn't realize they were watching a bunch of cinematics.
Yeah, exactly. So and remember, this isn't something new. This has always been like the games that have the most shiny graphics. That's a throwdown term for graphically intensive games. They always get the most attention. That's just the way human nature works. It's not really like a bad attitude. It's just the way it is. Those kind of graphics, generally speaking, are more appealing to most people.
Well, it's risk aversion, Tony.
Yeah.
When you see a game with really nice graphics, do you think that it's been developed well? Do you think it's had a lot of money put in? What comes to mind when you see a super shiny fucking game?
Oh yeah, quality it's almost, for sure. Yeah, you that's the first thing you think, like, oh shit, they put a lot of money into this. This must be quality. That may not always be truth, obviously, but that's the first thing that pops up. Meanwhile,
no, and it's been this way since the Super Nintendo.
Oh man. It's always been like that. I mean, think about it. Why do you think we had graphic wars, the 16-bit wars, the 32-bit wars? Like, this is not anything new. This is just the way it is. But now, obviously, we have games that look photorealistic that kind of raises the level up, so people expect that. So when they see something like a Journey or whatever, like they're gonna be like, what the fuck is this? Especially when they could have these kind of games on their phones, even though you could have really really good looking games on your phone too. But that's the general perception of it, So this isn't, again, it's not something bad. It's just how it is, Well,
let's all be honest here.
Graphics are the easiest way to quantify pricing, right? Like if you said you spent millions of dollars on Breath of the Wild, people would be like, "Yo, man, you crazy."
Yeah, Brett, what were you gonna say?
The thing about it is like,
yeah, Brett, go ahead.
I was gonna say, there's a risk there, man. There's a risk because where do you put your money as a gamer? I highly, and I hate to say this, but I highly doubt Hi-Fi Rush would have done as well. Because it's got that cell shade graphic, which everybody looks at that and you're usually like, ooh, that's dangerous. That's a big old red flag right there. Mm-hmm. And you kind of hang out on the fence. That's one of the reasons I think, as much as I seem to fanboy about it, I just really think Game Pass is kind of important / going to change things. It's the Sega channel that I've always wanted, so I still give them the most credit, weirdly enough. I'm like, they pioneered this shit. But it's really difficult to find a good game when you're just gambling with your money. You're gambling with your money with people who have been untruthful with you, who have misrepresented themselves time and time again. It's just a room full of pitfalls, and I honestly fucking hate doing that. Like when you're scheduling, or I don't know if anybody else budgets for their gaming hobby, but when you're sitting there, I'm like, okay, where do I fucking put this money? It gets fucking frustrating that everybody is basically lying to you and trying to get your money, and then you spend that $70 and you sit down 2 hours in, you're like, I made a terrible mistake. This game is fucking shit.
A room full of pitfalls. What is this? An Atari days? What's going on?
The dated ass graphics. Yeah.
So I think it's just risk aversion. It's just, I don't want to get a bad game, so I'm going to look for a game. And I think a lot of this is honestly subconscious, but I don't want to play a bad game. I want to play a game that some work was put into. This game looks like it has work put into it. Thus, I am excited. Have you ever played a game that the graphics are amazing, but as soon as you put the controller in your hand, you're like, something's wrong. This game feels wooden.
Callisto Protocol.
Yeah, no, Callisto Protocol is a great example of like, hey, the game looks fucking nice, but that gameplay and all that, So it's definitely like a danger for sure. Because you're right. It's like you could have a really good looking game that plays like shit to you, or a game that you may actually like, but you'll like pass over because it's like indie looking. It's a conundrum. Like you really have to understand what you as a consumer like in order to avoid those kind of pitfalls or whatever. But for the average person, I think that's an actual problem. Like a person who is not so well versed in what games are out there, that they don't fully understand what they like. They're kind of maybe wishy-washy, which I think most people are for the general part. That could be a problem, But again, it's hard to fight human nature. You're just going to naturally gravitate towards the nicer graphics. That's just how it is, So
well, Tony, they always put the money in the budget for the advertising too. So when they come out, they're like, Destiny 2, fireworks, explosions, pyrotechnics. You're going to walk away being like, everybody's excited about Destiny 2, when really they spent the most money on advertising. It's a kind of insidious thing to make you feel like, well, the herd is going this way. No, that's just what they paid somebody to make you think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't really, as far as like how do you determine which game is good despite its graphics? That's a trickier question, to answer, because everybody's obviously
everybody's different here. Everybody has their own interest, what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah, great question though. I don't know if we can answer that, but I can answer that. Like human nature is very simple. People like shiny shit. That makes sense. It's just, but I can't answer the question of like how do you find a game that may actually be good for you, that may not look all that. That's a more interesting question there. But yeah, good stuff. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Yeah, you can't do it with demos anymore.
Yeah, you can't. Unfortunately, but demos don't exist.
You can do it with the next best thing, and it's YouTube. Just watch somebody play it, and then see from their gameplay if that's something you would want to play. And if you're like, wow, this looks kind of whack, it's just not there. There you go. You just saved yourself some money.
Yeah. Blitz says, Toolmaker, he goes, so going by human nature, the issue for smaller games is so they sink budgets into graphics so it gets attention. Yeah, I mean, again, if you put money into something, it looks nicer, it's going to get more attention,
Yeah, but there's also ways that you can sort of leverage it. If you notice that, like, when it comes to like smaller games that have really nice graphical, fidelity, they're never trying to cast as wide a net as something like an Elden Ring or like what is that game, Horizon Zero Dawn, where they're making an open world. It's like all this sort of stuff. They have at least a few things that they do good, and they keep it to that. Like if you look at a game like the ones that the guys who made Heavenly Sword, Senua's Sacrifice.
Yeah.
What was the main focus of that game? It did. It was a story-driven game. It was very sort of locked down, smaller encounters, very story-driven, very controlled, and that's how they're able to sort of wow people. Like, oh wow, this is an independent game, and it's it's done for a middle-A budget. Is because they leveraged that into these specific things and never weren't looking to make like a massive experience.
Yeah.
Well, and also, like, I get the impression he's talking about, like, what would be the solution to this. And obviously, as we always say, don't pre-order games. Watch YouTube once the games come out to discern if that's, something that you want. And it's, in my opinion, in a perfect world, we just all stop pre-ordering games. So we'd almost force their hand to give us demos again. Because demos or something like Game Pass, like, you need to lower the bar for entry. It is ridiculously expensive getting into gaming at this point. It's one of the more expensive hobbies. And, as you said, if you don't know what you're into and you're trying to explore your taste, throw in $70 here and $70 there.
Yeah.
It's not great, man, and it's not going to be a long-term solution.
I agree. I have a question. This is a super hypothetical right now, right? What if you have Yeah, I have. I have to do it. I have to do it. What if you have a game like Hi-Fi Rush with the marketing budget of Destiny? Would that help?
Oh yeah. People are lemmings. Sorry.
Because you can shove it
know.
everywhere. You can put it in front of movies. You can put it in front of cartoons. I mean, it's all.
It's a difficult one to gauge because.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking the question because I don't know the answer
Because people are very, let's just face it. Tony sees something that's cartoony or something like that. He thinks it's childish and will not go for it. And I feel like a lot of people feel that way when it comes to certain types of looking games. Realistic is serious. Cartoony is for kids.
Yeah. By the way, just for the record, because I know someone's going to misconstrue it, I am not interested in Hi-Fi Rush because it looks cartoony. I think the graphics look awesome. I just don't like rhythm games. Just want to get that out there.
Yeah, and those of us that know Tony have been like, yes, it's not a Tony game.
Yeah.
No,
the graphics look fucking awesome. Like, that is a game I would like to see. Like, I like that. It looks like a fucking animated show. That's great. It's just, I'm not into rhythm shit,
But I would say that sort of stylized game is a very difficult sell to general audiences.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I think it would help it for sure because, again, like Brett said, people go, oh, everyone's talking about this. I'm going to go play this game now. But at the same time, if you have a game that looks like Call of Duty versus a game that looks like this with the same budget, the Call of Duty game is going to sell more because it looks like nicer to most people.
Yeah, and it's usually the shiny. Again, you can the shine. Usually, the shinier of the things usually tends to overshadow it.
Yeah,
I feel like Gravity Rush released in a very similar situation.
Yeah.
It's a $40 game. It did well on the PlayStation Portable, but for one reason is like it was one of the there wasn't a lot on the PlayStation Portable at launch, but when it came to PlayStation 4, it didn't do very well.
Yeah,
partially probably because it was also because it usually has it didn't have have the push that maybe like a Horizon Zero Dawn had behind it.
And I need to jump in with this one, right? Because we have this whole notion of the Sony game, right? Like the Sony. There's a name for it. I forget what the fucking name is. There's a Sony game, right? You notice that Sony actually has a lot of different games under its catalog, but the games that don't fit that specific mold that people expect, third person action, graphically intensive, they don't get the attention at all, right? I'm talking about games like Concrete Genie and shit like that, right? Those games exist. They break the mold of what you expect the typical PlayStation game to be, but since they don't look like, Days Gone or Horizon Forbidden West, those games don't get that much attention. Again, that's just human nature,
Hey, look at Shadow of Mordor. It brought in a completely new system that nobody had ever brought before, but it did it with shininess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Man,
but here's the thing I got to point out.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think a marketing budget has diminishing returns. I think Destiny really kind of proved that with half of its fucking budget going to marketing. Yeah, everybody was excited, but there comes a certain point where you're just throwing money away, not getting it in front of people's faces anymore, but just trying to shove it in their faces multiple times. I think more exposure helps games, but I also think there's two sides to it, right? There's the advertising side, and then there's the memetic part. Elden Ring didn't need to fucking advertise at all because instantly YouTube was flooded with Elden Ring videos, right? And this kind of happens with a lot of games where people can kind of take control and tell their own story. It becomes memetic. It gets watched on Twitch. YouTube videos get posted about it. Tutorials get posted about it. You hear it from all your friends, and you dive in. I think that's what got Hi-Fi Rush. It was the shadow drop.
There's also that, it's the fact that it's a shadow drop and the fact that it was available right away. I think that, you initially get that initial pump. And if you think about it, they really didn't need to do an advertising budget if they dropped it literally on the same day as the thing happened, right? Yep. You see it, I don't think they nearly had, well, then again, in general, Hi-Fi Rush didn't have the budget of it's literally a middle A game. It costs like, what was it, $40? Well, it was actually $30. It was less than a middle A.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. We still got more questions here. Also, another one from Tumeke. Despite its toe dips over the years, Sony has continued with VR. Why is that? Simple. It's sold. It's as simple as that.
They leveraged what their budget was, and if you look at all the games that are being produced for it, even though they are in the $60 and $70 range, they don't have huge budgets. They're pretty much like smaller games that are have this additional thing of the VR. That's why they said with the previous VR, they were like, wow, this did better than we expected. I don't think they had a lot of expectation behind it.
Yeah.
So remember, they were offering to send it to people. I remember getting an email that just said, hey, listen, you don't even have to put money down. Just put a credit card. We'll send it to you for free. And you can have it for like 2-3 weeks. And if you like it, then keep. If not, send it back. I was like,
and again, it hit that magic sweet spot. Was it $400 or something? The original. It was at the time it was the cheapest VR headset.
Yeah, exactly. But now, meanwhile, the new one, the current one, I think that might be a harder sell.
Yeah,
it's literally as much as a PlayStation itself.
It's as much as a PlayStation. It's not backwards compatible. That's a problem.
It's not backwards compatible.
Yeah,
there's a lot of issues that I think they're not going to see the returns that they received after from creating the first one.
Yeah, I honestly believe the first one did well just because it was the cheapest VR headset. I honestly believe that.
Exactly. I definitely.
And guess what? This new one is no longer the cheapest VR headset you could get.
No, I mean literally the current Meta Quest, which is like the newest, fanciest one, cheaper than that PlayStation. In fact, even though they raised the price, it's still cheaper.
It's
still cheaper. So it's like, I definitely think that it's going to be a harder sell, especially with the titles that they're releasing for it. Like at least from the way the PlayStation, thing showed off a lot of the games. They're really not any showcases. One of them was literally a remastered old game. Another one was just some random VR sort of shooting game. I think they had like 3 shooting games on there. They're not proving that this is the wave of the future. Just proves that you can just make a bunch of first-person shooters.
At one of the Dark Pictures anthology, they have a version that's coming for it.
Yeah,
a bunch of that.
They did. Those guys did do that one VR game, but
Unreal. The
Until Dawn one, but that thing was kind of dumb. It was like you ride a roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't anything like okay, you made a VR roller coaster. Good for you.
You could say that about a lot of VR games.
I feel like the biggest showcase. I feel like one of the bigger showcases of the VR was that Resident Evil 7, right?
Yeah.
That was the biggest showcase of that thing.
I don't understand what developers don't understand about. I want a video game, but I want it in VR. You want a VR game? No, that's not what I fucking said. I want a video game in VR.
There's a difference.
Right? Like everybody lost their shit over Skyrim VR. Like just give us a real fucking game that we can play in VR. But this fucking headset, it's nothing. It is not the most convenient. It is not the most advanced. It is not the cheapest. It is not the most well supported. Like I'm almost, as a VR enthusiast, I'm almost fucking insulted by this. Like, what the fuck do you think that you're just going to throw $500 at you because you're like, here's a second one after we just shit the bed on the first one? Really? And you're not doing anything different. I don't see any major first-party Sony games. I see that you open it up and let other people try and carry the platform for you.
Yeah, it's very little, and it just seems like they're just sort of making the same sort of, I don't know, just demo games for the most part.
Yeah, that's what these things feel
I guess
like.
the most you could say that one survival game that would probably keep you in that sort of world longer. But also, again, it's leveraging the same sort of deals. Like, hey, look, I'm picking up things. I'm putting do you want to do that in VR? Like, survive in VR?
I mean, VR games generally have to be a little bit more slow and methodical. Like, it really shows you your limitations as a human being when you jump into a VR game and you're like, I'm going to shoot the bow at that guy. Fuck, I don't actually know how to shoot a bow. This is becoming a problem.
Yeah, so
I think they need to slow things down, but that is fucking too much. As somebody who likes slow games, I like slow games and survival games and VR, and I'm still saying no.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that game was just sort of like, all right, we need stuff to put on this thing. All right, port
It
that
was a
thing.
token game. We need to survive. What's popular? Survival. We need a survival game. Hey.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to say about VR?
Yeah,
I lament what could have been.
Go ahead.
We all love it. Go get it. Can't you tell? We all support it.
I'm mostly in the same camp as Brett is. I just don't know what Sony's up to with this one. I feel like this is like another PlayStation Portable / Vita situation where the first one sold a lot and sold more than Sony thought it would, but Sony didn't know why it sold, so then they just made another iteration, and then they kind of don't know what to do with it, and then letting third parties just lift it up, and ultimately it'll just flop after a while.
It's funny you say that, Brian, because I was literally thinking that. I'm like, this sounds like another PSP, PS Vita situation.
Yep, it definitely feels that way. And like, if it's them misjudging the audience and then making bad decisions on top of it. I mean, again, like, who usually leads the way, right? It's usually the big company, the guy that own it. They put out their titles to say, okay, this is what we can do with it. But no, Sony looks like they just threw a bunch of third parties at it and said, all right, we just make the videotape playing device.
Yeah.
You make the tapes.
Oh, dude, I just realized something. Sony doesn't support hardware that we wanted to keep supporting, whereas Microsoft keeps supporting hardware that we don't want it to support.
Yeah.
Well, they at least gave up that stupid Connect. At least they
Eventually, but it took them like 2 goddamn years, and that's what put them so far behind.
Yeah. All right, man, let's move on here. Kiss Shack in the house. All right. It's been close to 4 years now, and gamers still can't tell the difference between a state of play and a PlayStation showcase. Are you guys at all surprised at how gamers react to these state of plays with these lofty expectations when in the title of the show, you don't see the word showcase anywhere? If you still can't tell the difference, I hope all your games have corrupted saves, all your controllers get stick drift, and every upcoming PC game you want is an Epic Store exclusive.
Oh, that's fucking savage.
Damn, that's brutal, you know? By the way,
Lego type level shit.
Yeah, that's crazy. Here's the funny thing, man. Until you asked this question, I didn't know there was a difference either. I didn't fucking know, but it makes sense. Like, I guess the showcase is like, correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I'm just like, I never thought about this, right? State of play is like, hey, here's what we're working on right now, and a showcase is like, hey, here's this game, check this shit out. You know, am I wrong about that?
I think the reasoning why between the two, why maybe somebody may not be able to see is because the branding is so similar. Anybody just sees it as a PlayStation event. They don't care about the other part of it. Oh, PlayStation's got a thing.
Yeah. Just for the larger thing, any showcase, it doesn't matter if it's PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo. The fans are going to come in thinking it's going to be the greatest thing of all time, right? And when it isn't, which is 99% of the time, they get very upset because they come in with all these wild fucking expectations. This is not a Sony thing. This is everything, right? How many with the fucking Nintendo fans, right? Where every direct is going to be the greatest thing of all time. But of course, with these guys, it always is the greatest thing of all time, which is hilarious. Xbox, same thing. Oh, we're going to get this. We're going to get that. They don't get it. They get upset. Sony, oh, we're going to get this. We're going to get that. The craziest fucking predictions, right? They don't come through. People get mad. They will literally tell you what they're going to show at the show, and you're going to get mad because they didn't show the thing you wanted. They told you right there in your face. Aaron Greenberg comes out, hey, we're going to show this, this, and that. Why didn't you show this? They just told you what they were going to show. Why are you getting upset? So the larger
I think the why didn't you show that is okay. Yeah. I think it's valid.
No, but the thing is, if they tell you what they're going to show, you shouldn't get mad that they didn't show the thing you wanted.
No, you shouldn't. You know? But there's like a weird middle ground in there where you're like, I didn't expect it, but I still feel like they should have shown it. Kind of like, imagine Last Guardian, right? Like at year 7, you're like, I haven't heard anything about this, and I'm pissed that I haven't heard anything about this.
Yeah, I'm with Brett here. Let's say it's E3 time and Xbox has a showcase and they still don't show Starfield by then.
Yeah.
People should be mad at them.
Yeah, no, but my point is like I don't disagree with what you guys are saying, but I'm saying if they tell you what they're going to show up front, here's what we're going to show.
They can't be upset that it failed to appear, but they still can be upset in the sense that like I knew it wasn't going to be here, but I still felt that it should be here.
Yeah, there you go. It's
really tough to splice between those two. So when everybody's yelling, you can't be like, what the fuck do you guys mean? What is it? Did you actually expect it to be here, or are you just mad that it's not? But here's the one thing I want to throw in here. Back in Victoria times, men went fucking crazy over ankles, right? And my point is that dudes get thirsty when there's fucking nothing, and the people will get excited for whatever they have. It's just a test. Like, you remember when we used to ignore these shows because honestly they weren't fucking newsworthy in the grand scheme of things.
We do actually ignore them because we don't do any live casts of them anymore.
Yeah,
well, you know what I mean. Like fucking like last generation, I didn't give a shit about a state of play because there was shit coming out because there was other stuff I was excited about. But now when you're like, oh, there's a video game, like they're actually going to talk about a video game, a new video game. Oh, I'm fucking there. Like, all you have to hear is premiere, and you're like, well, I guess I'm fucking watching this. Maybe it's something that I want, finally.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing that I would agree with Tony from the other side is when people expect something that they're pulling out of their ass.
Yeah.
And they're told that it's not going to be there.
A la Metal Gear, Metal Gear remake.
Or Silent Hill or anything like that.
Yeah, Carlos, that's where I'm coming at it from. Like, you can't like literally pull. Like, here's the thing: if you expecting Starfield from an Xbox show and don't show it, I think that's a good reason to get upset, right? But if you're going, why did they show the new Legacy of Kain? I'm like, what? Where'd you get that from? You know?
Mm-hmm. Well, they're expecting a shadow drop.
Yeah,
that's like expecting a surprise guest. You're just going to be disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but again, this happens with every single showcase, right? Particularly with Nintendo showcases. It's like, oh, they expect it's going to be the fucking bomb. You know, it's like everything. They go into so much excitement. I'm like, calm the fuck down, guys. You know?
Oh, my God. They're going to announce the new Super Smash Brother character, and it's going to be Goku. Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing, Toy, like, especially with the Nintendo crowd, it's tough because we look at it from the outside and like, y'all keep getting fucking hyped over stupid bullshit and then get let down. Why are y'all so happy? But from the inside, they're living in a state of perpetual hype. To them, it's always a fucking party because even when they get let down, there's that over there to get excited about. There's really no negative. Like, I've kind of lived on that side before, and I genuinely try to live more on the side of hype, live more on the side of an optimist, because as an optimist, it's always the next thing that's going to be super great. But at my core, I'm a fucking pessimist, and I understand that was bullshit, and the next thing you give me is probably going to be bullshit. But I want to live in that first place, man. It's so much nicer living in that first place, and I don't blame people who live there for just kind of sticking their head in the sands, because you know what? At the end of the day, it's a better fucking life.
I mean, if you want to live that way, sure. You know, not for me, man. Because no, my thing is like there's so many disappointments you could take before you had enough. Where it's just easier to be like everything sucks. Because most of the time, at least for me, when I have my expectations low, and I'm usually right, I can't be upset. You know,
actually, that's a common pessimist trap.
Yeah.
The problem with that is you live in a state of perpetual disappointment.
Yeah.
You live in a state of perpetual expecting disappointment. Even when something goes well, you're preparing yourself for the next thing that's not going to go well.
Yeah, and the thing is, that attitude has actually served me more well than being eternally optimistic. Because optimism doesn't come very often in life. Life is fucking bad, you know. So when you're expecting things to go bad and they do, you can't be too upset because they're going exactly as you expected. You know what I'm saying?
But here's the thing. When you see the thing and you get disappointed, you're like, see, I saved myself from this. The optimist doesn't even fucking see that disappointment. Their eyes are already on the horizon of the next thing. They don't feel that disappointment.
That's insane to me. How does that work?
It is.
Actually, you know what? We're going to get to it, but just quickly explain that to me because I'm like, wait, what? How do you not feel the disappointment? It's like it happened. You know?
Okay, look at it this way. This is the way I always explain it to people. Christmas is generally, if you're a fan of Christmas, like as a kid, it's the weeks leading up to Christmas that are the most exciting part. Christmas, bam, over like a fucking snap, right? But to the pessimist, Christmas is going to be over. It's just going to be bullshit. Boom, Christmas is over. Now I'm in the post-holidays kind of depressive slump along with everybody. This fucking sucks. But the person who's unreasonably optimistic, Christmas comes, and then there's this other thing right down the road. So even if they didn't get what they want for Christmas, they're thinking about their birthday, right? They're happy. That happiness is never interrupted. And these people use optimism to do things as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Some of the most successful people are only successful because they somehow deluded themselves into they're going to be successful. Trent Reznor's a fucking perfect example. So neither is right and neither is wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody has their own brain space and reacts to it the same way. Like, I don't think Tony would ever make a great pessimist. I just happen to be one of those people where I kind of skirt the line. Sometimes I can kind of force myself over that optimist point of view. And let me tell you, brother, it is so much more pleasant there.
Yeah. See, I'm glad you said that, Brett, because I don't consider myself a pessimist. I'm just a realist, you know?
That's what pessimists say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also true. You know, but hey, it works for me, so I can't be too disappointed by that, you know?
No, I'm just saying. So when you see these people that, like, they're almost in this cult-like behavior, it's like, you got to realize it's a constant carnival, these motherfuckers. Even when something's bad, there's something good on the horizon, and there's people on the sidelines hyping them up.
Listen, man, I'll say this generally. I envy those people, man. That is fucking awesome. You know, like, listen, if you're in a perpetual state of optimism, you know, specifically when it comes to these showcases, I think that's fucking great. I can't have that. So good on you, you know, because again, the world is fucked up. Is fucked up enough as it is. Get whatever joy you can out of it, because life is fucking bleak. You know, so good on you. Yeah, shout out to those guys, man. I may think you're fucking crazy, you know, but I give you respect. You know?
It's funny because, like, I'm not pessimistic or optimistic. I just sort of let it roll over me and make the decision after. Like, I don't have any, like, this is like, I'm not having any, whenever these states of plays or any of these things, I really don't have any expectations for them. I just like, show me something. Yeah. That's just the way it is. It's like, okay, I really see this. This is really cool. You know, but that's about it. It's like, it's never like, oh man, this is gonna suck. I'm like, hey, you know, let's see what they got.
Yeah,
they don't got nothing. All right, whatever.
Yeah, I want to read something Blitz said, because this is very important. He goes, also, the pessimist who then shits on optimists for being happy, excited is the one with the issues. 100% agree. Let people have their fucking joy. You know, because you see this shit, right? People, like, you know, they get happy about something on Twitter. Then you have some fucking piece of shit go in the comments. Actually, it was sucky because blah, 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 blah. Dude, shut the fuck up. Tweet it on your own. If you're really upset about it, tweet on your own. Don't go shit on other people's parades. That's fucking terrible. Don't do that shit. You know?
Yeah, but those people are upset because they don't know why somebody's happy and they're not, so they have to fix that shit.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? If you're upset about something, you tweet it on your own thread. Let the happy people be happy. You know, it's pretty fucking simple. You know. Anyway, good question, man. Let's move on. Mob hits in the house. All right. I think this is a reworded version of a question we have gotten before, maybe even from Mob Hits himself. But we can answer it quickly enough. Okay, with Suicide Squad being online only, when are developers going to get the hint that these type of game structures are going to be dead on arrival most of the time? Talk about games as a service. Do you think trying to latch onto the service game bandwagon is a waste of time? Listen, they're going to keep trying, man. And here's the thing about
there's a lot that are successful. That's why. Until all the successful ones die out, Fortnite, Destiny, and all the other ones like that, then they're going to keep doing it. Because all it takes is one.
Yep.
All it takes
they want to catch that.
Bro, even when there can only be one, everybody's going to try and be the Highlander.
Yep, that's right. Think about it. Sony, they're developing 10 of these fucking games. They don't expect all 10 of those games to be successful. They just need one of them to stick. One. That's all they need, you know? Granted, I think, you know, I don't like that practice, but I understand it from a business standpoint, you know? So, yeah, we've talked about this before, so we don't need to go too deep into it.
Chasing trends. That's what they're doing.
That's what it is, and the gaming industry always does that.
But I'll tell you when it's going to change. When something else is wildly successful and mimetic, and they'll be like, let's copy that.
Oh, yeah. It always happens.
That's always how it happens. It's like, hey, you know, platformers are great. We're going to do our own platformer. first-person shooters are great. We're going to do our own first-person shooter.
Now, here's the optimist perspective, ironically enough, from this whole thing. Creativity bubbles up from the bottom. We finally, for the first time in history, have an entire generation of people who can make their own games, who do make their own games, who pioneer new mechanics. They get popularized on Steam. It rises up. Other people emulate it. There's actually a creative process that kind of subverts the big company, and we've never had that before.
It's like, here's the thing: innovation has always been made in lower budgeted things, because in general, the bigger guys don't care about, like, as long as you're staying within that budget, you can do whatever the fuck you want, and that's always been that way. It's rare when a larger, like a big budgeted thing, changes the industry. And I still feel that's true, and I feel like it's also just rolled over into the indie space. But if you ever, again, like I said, in the indie space, it's always, they're never trying to do more than the thing that they do. Then once that thing that they do is ends up being a success, that's when the big guys go, hey, that shit works, let's do that too, because they don't need to take any chances because they already saw that it works.
Yep. I mean, it used to have to be like, I remember ranting about how developers need to start picking up good ideas and hiring modders, but that scene has changed. Those modders are now just making their own games on Steam.
They also got tired of getting cease and desist from these big companies, trying to essentially make sequels to their own games. It's rare, like what happened with with Half-Life and that other game, the multiplayer game. That was a mod, right?
Gary's mod, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's Gary's mod, and then there's what's the thing? What the hell was it called? The Counter-Strike, right? Is that what it is? Counter-Strike, the sort of multiplayer version of Half-Life.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe CS:GO.
Yeah, Counter-Strike. That was created by modders.
Yeah.
It's a rare, and Portal was also a thing that was created by people that were just doing mods and testing those things out of the way. So it's rare. Like, I feel like when it came to those guys, they essentially were looking at the little guys doing their little projects and being, hey, that's kind of cool. We should make that into a game.
But honestly, the survival genre started as a mod. Like, it started as the military shooter Arma, then it went to DayZ, and DayZ really kind of blew up that whole thing. It was a mod that had millions and millions of downloads, and then all of a sudden everybody was like, okay, well, I'll make you chop down a tree to get a stick. Between that and Minecraft.
There's also the walking simulator. That is also a fabric, an outcome of the modding community, Yeah,
that's true. I mean, damn, the modding community has really given a lot to gaming that's stuck, man. Like, hats off to you guys. You do shit for free because you're passionate. You do it well. You somehow make big budget video games just better, and they yell at you. Fuck them. Good on you.
I think, again, like, it's because they're doing it for no money. There's no, and then again, if one of those big guys sees that it works, they'll want to capitalize on it, and that's when they start hiring these guys or whatever. But again, a lot of these guys have just been taking that stuff when they're making their, one guy's was wanting to do a remake of Metal Gear Solid, right? Just totally balls to the walls remake of Metal Gear Solid. Then what happened? Konami threw a fucking brick at him. And then what did he do? He says, you know what? I want to make my own sneaking game.
Yeah. All right. Moving on here. Also from Mob Hits, right? Will Capcom ever make fighting games with 2D visuals again? Would it ever adopt the visual style of Arc System Works games?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think it's already too far gone right now in order for them to that would be seen as going backwards.
Not only seen as going backwards, but also trying to copy what other guys are doing.
I could see it happening for a resurrected fighting game like Street Fighter. I don't think there's any going back.
Darkstalkers, maybe, right?
Yes, I could see if they decided to go with Darkstalkers and do it in that way, they can get away with it because there hasn't been a Darkstalkers game in quite a while.
Yeah.
So if they decided to do a game that was in a different style like that, they could probably get away with it. But I don't think they could go back from Street Fighter. It's only going to get more, graphically intense and stuff like that. Like they're even moving it away from the stylization of the previous games.
Yeah, it's only if that shit fails. Like if their main franchise fails, then I think they'll pull a Coca-Cola Classic and go back to classic Street Fighter.
I also think that Capcom understands that the shiny, putting shiny people and all that other stuff seems to be the thing. I don't like the style of the new Street Fighter game. I think they all look like Croft puppets, but that seems to impress people, so they're going to keep going down with that.
Yeah, I just want to say to all the Street Fighter fans out there, let's take a moment, sit down. I got to be real with you guys. I'm sorry it's over.
Adam, you have any thoughts on that?
It's been bastardized. Just pack it.
I don't know. We'll see. I didn't like how they did the whole microtransaction aspects for 5, but when it all came out and it was said and done, I love it. I love the art style. I love the gameplay, the characters. I could play that for hours. I still play for hours on the Steam Deck.
Did you buy all the characters?
Oh, after the fact, yeah. Way after the fact. I only kept the ones. There's only a handful that I really like. I like Cody, Ryu, Ken. There's only a few. I didn't really care about all the other ones. And I was like, you know what? I'll wait. And sure enough, I wait, and they went on sale, and then I bought the bundles after.
Okay. So you bought it on sale, but let me ask you, how much did you end up paying for Street Fighter altogether? I'm just curious.
$25. Because
hey, all right.
the bundles were $5. They're still $5. Go to CD Keys, you can get the whole thing now for like $10. All the DLCs and everything, the Champion Edition. So
that's not too bad.
No, it's not, because I didn't go in when they were like, oh yeah, you got to sign up for this.
The FOMO wasn't real for you, Adam.
No.
You were thinking with the right side of your brain.
Yeah, because like, you know what? I know the characters I'm going to play with. I know the ones I'm going to use. It doesn't matter which version. I always start off with Ryu. Why? Because I know how to do all his moves. I know everything. So I was like, all right, I know how to do the super move. I know the Dukins and all of them. So those are the ones I go to. So this looks fine. It didn't look. I remember when they made that jump from to 4, when they made that change, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. And then I played it, and I was like, oh wow, okay, this works. I can go with this. And 5 was more of 4, and now this is.
It's an evolution. You can definitely see the evolution of what they were going to go for. So, like 4, what was it? 4 was very sort of CGI looking. So obviously, the next step was just to take it even more sort of, shiny and CGI looking. I mean, again, like it's not my aesthetic, but I can see why it impresses other people.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like.
Real quick, the tricky part with how they did this one is like what we talked about, how the characters look like they pop too far out. But then again, we're watching it on a stream or on a compressed video. That's something I need to see on my console, on my 4K TV with all the settings on. I want to see how that actually, if it's a 1-for-1 for what I saw, I'm like, oh, this is more of that shit. These guys look like they were just tacked on to all these backgrounds. Or is it more fleshed out and
I think I know why they did it. It's just for clarity's sake. So where you're not essentially battling, that's one thing you have to, like, battling what's in the background as opposed to what's going on in the foreground. In the previous games, like the old 2D games, what they used to do is they used to use very sort of singular color palettes to sort of push everybody back. They never used a lot of the colors of the main characters in the background so that you would have that visual separation.
The desaturated background.
Desaturated or tinting it into tinting all the colors into a specific sort of range, sort of again to build that sort of visual look, that visual separation. Yeah.
Even like if you get down to like, man, they dropped the black. Their black ain't black. It always kind of looks like there's a little bit of fog over the background. But here's the thing. I am 95% sure this is going to be a great game. Thing about fighting games is, especially online ones, they take those fight metrics and they analyze them and they figure out what people do, what people don't do, what people like, what people don't like. There are not many games that are as tailored to the audience as fighting games are. The bad part about that is it's inevitably going to evolve and drift further and further from the original. And that's why I say Street Fighter, guys, it's kind of over. Like the Street Fighter 2, like if you're old school, it's not that game anymore. go into it expecting something different, and I think you're going to be more pleasantly surprised. Like, I think the problem with these games is, especially for us old heads, like, we remember the old one. We remember the original ones, and we can't help but compare those to them a little bit, and that makes the game feel foreign. And so I just
think, and these games have a new audience now, so it's very different.
Yeah, it's a very different audience, but I will also argue that these games are not a chance. They're just an evolution of what has happened before. They will not take a drastic spin like Street Fighter 3 did from Street Fighter 2. That you will never see that again. You'll just see the sort of just slight upgrades to certain things, but for the most part, these characters and things will all pretty much play exactly the same with little bits of gameplay changes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Street Fighter 4 was, before we move on. It's like it went back to basics, basically. After 3, I kind of upset some people. Blitz, we got you, man. Your other I think we have one more question from you somewhere in here, but we got you, man. You only had 3 questions, I believe, right? There's the AAA game one, the VR, and then there's the other one about games you want to play or whatever. All right, so let's move on. Where the fuck are we? Again, we still got a lot of questions. Toon Medic, our boy Mr. Michael Santiago.
What's up, Mike?
All right. He goes, "What's up, Throwdown? What's up, Mike? What are your favorite licensed video games? Right now, I have Hogwarts Legacy over the Arkham games. Very interesting. Arkham games, they're the shit. I love the, I was going to say both of them, but it's only one, right? No, there is 2 of them. The Spider-Man Insomnia games, they're fucking great.
Spider-Man?
Miles Morales and the first one, fantastic games. The X-Men Legends Wolverine game was fucking awesome. Back in the old days, remember Batman Returns? That was really good.
Dude, Guardians of the Galaxy
turned 30 years old, Tony.
Oh shit, man! Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Batman Returns.
There's a lot of good licensed games back in the day. Disney had a lot of them back in the day.
Yeah.
Like DuckTales, Aladdin.
Oh, dude, Force Unleashed, still my favorite Star Wars game fucking ever.
Yeah,
Toy Story, man.
I never played that game. The Jedi Fallen, whatever the fuck. The last one came out.
Fallen Order.
Yeah. There's a lot of good licensed games. Here's the thing. There was that era where licensed games were shit, like in the 2000s specifically. But people forget, in the 90s, there was a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
There were so many bad ones too, though.
There were bad ones. Remember where it was Spot had his own fucking video game.
Spot,
Cool Spot.
Hey, I had that game, but I fucking loved it.
Even
Turtles in Time, baby. There we go.
But even then, a game like Cool Spot, they put a lot of work into that thing.
7-Up
animated really well.
Yeah, it was animated well. That's true.
That's Virgin.
They even had their own website called Cool Spot the Blog.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Cool stuff, actually.
Dude, that was actually really big. My uncle worked for 7-Up as a driver back then. I got the game. I got a little Cool Spot plush. I got some swag, yo.
Yeah.
I fucking love that game. I don't know why.
Yeah. Go ahead.
As opposed to the Domino Zoid game.
Oh.
Or Noid game.
I remember the Noid game. That was terrible.
Did you guys play DuckTales?
DuckTales was on Nintendo, yes.
Yeah. All the Burger King games, the bumper ones.
The remake's not bad either.
Yeah, the remake's pretty good too. Mighty Nerd, the Marvel vs. Capcom games were fucking awesome. All of those.
Marvel vs. Capcom,
X-Men Children of the Atom was the shit. There's a lot of
Turtles.
Good Turtles. Ninja Turtles, obviously. Even Shredder's Revenge, the latest one.
Yep.
Hey, by the way, I don't give a fuck.
Friday the 13th. Let's go. By the way, he's not talking about the new one. He's talking about the one on Nintendo.
And yes, baby.
Yeah.
Oh God, I remember that.
That was scary. You go into cabin, nothing, and all of a sudden a big Jason face pops up. It's like he's running towards him. Like, hi.
If you think about it, that DLC for Dead Cells, that's also a licensed game.
Dude, I'm excited about that. Dead Cells is a fun game, and it looks like it takes a good chunk of Castlevania, So I'm like, okay, this looks pretty fun actually. It's a nostalgic drop.
Shit, I remember when for Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands when they had the Predator. That was awesome. They had the music, they had the creature, they had everything until Disney bought the rights and kicked the shit off.
Soul Calibur did that too.
Oh yeah, remember that? They had Spawn, they had Link. Yeah.
Oh, they had Master Chief. Master Chief was in one of them.
No, not Master Chief. It was actually somebody else.
I remember
it was a Spartan.
I remember
it was a lady Spartan.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, it was a lady Spartan. It wasn't Master Chief though.
But yeah, remember that for Soul Calibur 2? I think it was Link, Spawn, and Heihachi, depending on what console you had.
And Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
The one funny thing that
let's with Michael Jackson though, Adam. You remember Moonwalker? You know,
Moonwalker.
Yeah.
Well, the one funny thing they found out about those Soul Calibur games that were released for all the consoles, all those characters are actually in the other games.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Link is in all three versions.
That's funny.
What was something like that? That's crazy.
All right, man. Good stuff.
Licensed games aren't bad.
Yeah, they're not bad.
Depending.
Yeah.
It's a real roll of the dice. I'm gonna be honest here.
Oh yeah,
it's the movie tie-ins that tend to be bad.
Remember Spider-Man and the X-Men? I like that game too. It's a lot of good stuff. The X-Men,
Superman.
Yeah, the X-Men. We ain't talking about that. The X-Men.
How many Spider-Man games have been made, and how many are good?
Yeah, exactly. There's some good. Yeah, there's been a lot of good ones.
Spider-Man's had a good track record
compared to other ones.
Compared to other ones, like he's had some pretty good ones, like licensed and movie. Even some of the
movie games were good.
Movie tie-ins, except for 3, I heard that wasn't very good. But I know
one was good. 2 was good. 2 fucking the new Spider-Man game is essentially a remake of the 2. But yeah, lots of good stuff there. Anyway, let's move on here. All right, we're gonna get into some sponsored questions. So we got a lot of extra ones. All right, who is this guy? Citizen. I have a feeling this guy lived in all 5 boroughs at one point or worked in them. So this is a question from Jay Shep. Activision was apparently hacked. More specifically, Call of Duty. Nobody seems to have gotten the memo, not even employees. I have a question for Adam, for no reason whatsoever. Does Activision getting hacked tie into any of the strange events with COD that you spoke about 2 weeks ago, i.e. switching to first person only, new maps, etc.? So Adam first in, man.
That was the thing. Some of the stuff was leaked out of the things that they had. It was like their roadmap of all the things that they wanted to release. I think that it was more of the public to outcry about the fact that they weren't going to have a multiplayer map and then with third person and all the other stuff, because it sounds like they're still going to stick to that roadmap from the leak. They haven't really come out and said it, but it looks like it is. Because besides, most people, when they think of hacks, are like, oh man, it's all the information and our accounts. It looked like it was a lot of information for the employees that was leaked out. But then there was also just their roadmap of what they had plans. And that's where we got to see that they plan on doing a premium release in 2023, when before we heard that wasn't the case. It came out within those docs that it was, I think it's Project Juniper or Jupiter or one of those, anything. The point is that Modern Warfare was going to get a DLC, and they said they kept building and building on it, and it came out in this report that they were like, you know what? It's pretty big. It's going to be a standalone, which means they can charge $70. It's not a standalone, but it's going to be an expansion as opposed to just a DLC. So from what I understand, you still need the Modern Warfare, the way they describe it in these docs is still needed, but now they're going to charge you $70. So I thought maybe they would change some things with that leak coming up, but it looks like they don't give a shit. It's set in stone. This is what they need to do. They just kept emphasizing that, oh no, customers' information is secure. We don't know. It's like, all right, fine, but what about all this other stuff, like the maps and this and that DLC? Don't look over there. Don't look over there. They're just going to go forward with. So we'll see what else happens with that. Yeah.
All right. So there you go. All right, next up we got Mr. Romulan, Mr. Romudef, sponsoring a couple of more J Shep. J Shep was busy this week, man, asking a lot of questions, so good stuff. Again, shout out to you. Hope you're feeling better while you're listening to us. First question. This one's a little bit contentious, people. So let me finish it, and then we'll get into it. It's a lot to dissect with this one. Listening to last week's show, the panel mentioned how quote-unquote bad this generation of gaming is. I'm just curious to know what exactly will constitute a quote-unquote good game from you guys. Is it graphics? Is it story? Is it mechanics? Out of the box, you guys pretty much poo-poo everything different from on all the showcases. From listening to the panel, if the game isn't a table tennis meets Call of Duty game or an open world Souls game with an extra hard death mode or a green box with shovelware inside, you guys don't seem too interested. I feel like at this point in gaming, there aren't any new plot or game mechanics. And how much better can graphics get than they are right now? Definitely not a night and day difference. Are you guys unpleasable?
I don't know what he's talking about. I said my game of the year for last year was WWE 2K22. That's none of those. That's some wrestling game.
Yeah. Let me real quick. Actually, let me just set this up. Okay. I don't like when we're told you guys this, you guys that. Think about it like this, right? The reason Throwdown doesn't have a game of the year show is because none of us can agree on what games we like. So saying you guys think this, you guys think that, you can't do that when all of us have so many different gaming opinions. You know, the thing is, some gaming opinions stick out more than others, and I will freely admit mine stick out more because I'm so abrasive about shit. But my opinion is not the same as these other guys, and their opinion is not the same as mine. So you can't really make that kind of blanket statement about this panel because, again, we can't even agree on what fucking games we like. You know how rare it is? Like, there's always, like, there's never been an instance where we all go, this game was awesome. Universally say that. It's like, it's very rare.
Yeah, there's a, like... Yeah, like there are definitely parts of our taste that align. You know, where I would say but even then, it's never all of us. It's rarely all of us at once. Where it's like everybody was playing the Division and enjoyed that. I wasn't really interested in it. You know, maybe you could say Turtles was the one that we all sort of aligned on.
We all came back from Monster Hunter.
And except for Adam, he wasn't in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's always at least one guy out of it, you know.
Yeah. Well,
here's the thing: like, we're not a monolith.
Me and Brian are like meh on God of War.
We're not a monolith, but that's by design, right? Like,
yeah.
I think half the fucking reason I'm here is just to piss the rest of these guys off, and apparently half the chat most of the time. But like, even between me and Tony. Like, you put me and Tony in a room, we will never figure out a game of the year for the most part.
This is true, yeah. Brent and I have completely different tastes, yeah.
Yeah, and we do that on purpose. We've said multiple times, like, we don't want to be one of those podcasts where everybody just sits around and agrees, because those things are fucking boring.
Yeah. And conversely, we don't want to be one of those podcasts where everybody disagrees on purpose, because that's fake too, you know? But the thing is, we just kind of naturally don't agree on things. So I don't understand, because again, this pops up every once in a while. It's like, you guys said this, you guys said that. How? Like, we have completely different tastes and shit, you know?
I play so many weird games that are out of the box at this point. Like, half the podcast, like, they all know a Brett game when they see one, but I don't think a lot of them play those Brett games.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say, there's a lot of those sorts of, like, survival-y, open-world-y, sort of minutia sort of games that I'm not very interested in. But I would say there are some other, for you, there's some games that do align. So I think that's the cool thing about us all. And I feel like, now if you think about it, none of these showcases had anything for any one of us.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah,
with our different sects of
But even then, right? With the last showcase, I said, hey, the Capcom stuff was at least good, And
I like that one, the third-person hack and slash.
See, so yeah, it's different. Again, I wish J Shep was here to kind of explain that a little bit, but if anybody else in the chat could explain that, I'd appreciate it. But again, I don't understand where this notion of you guys, where it's like, when it comes to games, we're very different, Also,
the Microsoft showed off a game in their last showcase that I think the majority of the panel played and beat. Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah, and then, who's the outlier? Me, you know. So there's always that one guy, you know.
Yeah, but Tony, you don't think Hi-Fi Rush isn't a good game? It's just not your jam.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not for me, you know. But that's my point. But if there was a you guys, you know, then all of us would be on it. So that doesn't exist with Throwdown at all, you know.
It would suggest that we would all agree on what, like, you know, again, like the last showcase, I really wasn't that impressed with most of the titles that all the titles that they shown, even the Street Fighter one. But again, it's like, you know, they're just not showing what they're not. I'm looking for reasoning to one, pick up another reason besides Spider-Man to pick up the new consoles, or, you know, I feel like in general none of these things. It seems like everybody out there just used to sort of mediocre and just being fine with that.
Yeah.
Oh! I just realized something too. I have to explain this to people a lot with me, but I think it also goes for the podcast as a whole, right? Like, the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is apathy. You'll be able to tell the topics that the Throwdown doesn't care about because we don't talk about them. We announce them and they go, okay, moving on.
Yep.
You know, when you like something is when you criticize it because you think it could be better because you see good in it, I think. So, yeah, we, as collectively as a podcast, we bitch about a lot of stuff. But it comes from a place of love, man. It really does.
Yeah, no. If you see a game where we're like, next, yeah, that's kind of worse than even hating it. If you think about it, you know.
If you think we're haters because we roll our eyes every time Nintendo announces a Smash character or a DLC for Mario Kart 8, then fine, we're haters, man. I don't mind being called a hater.
Yeah. When it comes to Nintendo, my feelings are known about this. I don't care for that company. I think they're terrible, you know. But that's just me, you know. All right, let's move on here. Another extra one from Jay Shep. At the moment, Microsoft seems to be all in on cloud gaming and Game Pass, while Sony seems to be toe-dipping in VR. In a distant future where only one of the two exists and it's the dominant avenue for gaming, assuming Sony went all in on VR, which do you pick would come out on top and why? VR is never going to be like
it's never going to be the mainstream.
No.
No.
Especially not when you're talking about a streaming
get Ready
service
Player One for everything.
Proven to work.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, by the way, shout out to Bob Hits with the bits, you know. But no, yeah, VR, like, it's not going to hit the mainstream like that, you know, compared to like a subscription service that everybody's already, you know, used to with just in general.
Phones, right? Yeah, they're still back with the Blizzard. The whole thing was like, you got a phone, right?
You got a phone, don't you?
that will apply for this type of shit. It's like, damn, I don't have one of those consoles. You don't need it. Just take out your phone. You can just do it on your phone.
Yeah. All right. So that one's pretty easy to answer. Moving on, more sponsored questions. We got one from, we got Eurocar 9 here sponsoring Mob Hits.
Oh, dude.
This is an interesting question, given, you know, all this ChatGTP stuff going on. Will we ever see video games developed with OpenAI-like technology? For no reason, Carlos, why don't you start us off first?
Yeah, I don't see why not. You know, even if it's as simple as just a basic subroutine for some random thing, like, hey, could the next Elder Scrolls game, can you generate me a quick storyline about something? And I'm pretty sure you can whip up something like that. Either that or, you know, even code it can do. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if people aren't already doing it.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that. It's probably already happening, you know?
Well, they're already using AI to generate environments. How do you think that they made that whole city in Spider-Man?
Yeah.
That wasn't authored. That wasn't specifically authored. They gave an AI, you know, the parameters to essentially develop the city, told it what things they wanted and what things that they didn't want, and then where to place all the little water towers and all that other stuff. All of that stuff in that city wasn't specifically placed.
No, I think you're touching on something important, Manny. People think procedural generation, they think unsupervised procedural generation, like Diablo does. A lot of times it's make a bunch of stuff, and then they start editing and curating that stuff, and that stuff is still done by hand.
Oh, yeah, like, you know, his thing, like, yes, you may procedurally generate, like, you know, they've been doing procedural generation all the way up to Mass Effect 1. where those planets, those things were all procedurally generated, initially. And then what they did was they made sure that they, like if it was an important planet, they would art up a specific part of the planet. Oh, hey, look, it's the mother base that's hanging out over here. Same thing with a lot of this other stuff. So it's all being used. It's just, obviously they're giving it a set form of parameters. Like, okay, you don't put a road through a building. You don't run a river across the path without a bridge, stuff like that. And then once you do that, and that's when they'll like, all right, yeah, this looks good enough, and then they'll start to adjust it and add things to it to art it up a little bit more to make it feel like it might be. But there's a lot of space that's just procedurally generated, so it's done.
Here's what I'm excited. I don't think a lot of people have thought about this. AI could clean up and optimize your code. That's one of the first things that ChatGPT has been shown to be able to do really well, is actually write code, terrifyingly enough. Well,
then they also found a lot of that code has been plagiarized.
Okay.
That's
a problem.
Yeah. But I'm saying as it gets more advanced, it'll be able to scan through code quicker than people can. It'll be able to run bug testing to a certain extent 10,000 times faster than we can.
Replace a job.
they also do have AIs for to look for specific bug testing as well, like, especially simple bugs, I'm sure. But I think all these things exist, but I don't think it's just specifically Chat GPT shit. I think it's stuff that already companies internally develop on their own.
Yeah, the point that I was making is that AI can code, and that opens a whole new world, I think. Because there are people that, I'm sure it's plagiarized code, are able to set up fairly simple computer programs by just telling it the parameters. So extrapolating off that, you should be able to have something that's able to run through the code. It may not find things like, oh, your character fell through the floor kind of thing, but it'll be able to bug check for like critical system failures, things like that. Redundancy in code that's where I'm really looking at it. Like, there are so many games that we play that I don't think a lot of people realize the code is so bloated. It doesn't need to be 100 gigs. It really fucking doesn't. But it's built on the back of things that are built on the back of things that are built on the back of things. And at a certain point, I think you just kind of give up optimizing it completely and be like, okay, well, this is what we can do when we're going to address problems as they come up. It becomes a giant fucking tower of complexity. And I think the AI will be able to go through that. So I guess my point is, I think we're going to see AI in video gaming, but not necessarily just in the way that people think. I think, speaking dialogue, sure. Like helping generate storylines, sure. But I think they're going to use it to kind of bridge the creative process. And unfortunately, do more with less. And that probably means costing people jobs. But it may also be more thorough on the upside of this dystopian future.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this?
The optimist speaks.
Can I just add to what Brett was saying? So I actually was looking at ChatGPT and writing some code myself, and what I noticed is that, yes, it does output code, but the problem is it outputs kind of shit code. Because I asked it to run a simple check where I said to it, okay, write me a code that checks if a string is a palindrome, so simple thing, right? And it wrote it in the language that I use, and I'm like, okay, it works, yes, but the problem is it has errors here, here, and here. So although, yes, it can write code, but it writes code it writes code the same way that someone would go on Google search and then copy and paste an answer from Stack Overflow, which is kind of not how you do code per se. I'm sure that Carlos would totally agree with that if he's listening. So I don't think it's quite there yet where it can do all the stuff that Brett is saying. And again, I would love it to do that. Don't get me wrong, because again, I spend most of my time just debugging other people's codes because people generally can't code that well. I'm sorry, but they can't. Yeah, it would definitely be nice to have like an AI system that can help identify issues in other people's code so that life is like a lot easier. But I think the question asked from Carlos is like, can you eventually get a situation where you can say to, Chat GPT 4 or 45 or something, like, hey, write me this game that does this, and then it goes off and does everything from scratch, which I think is a cool idea. I think it's definitely within the realm of possibilities, given the tools that we have. I mean, we have tools that generate art. We have tools that can generate some sort of animation. We have tools that can generate scripts. We have tools that can generate code. So I guess in theory, if you can somehow put them all together and make them work, then yes. But then again, like, isn't that how we got here? You know, it's lots of, I guess all these things put together, you can put them together and they can do something. So
Yep,
I don't think it's possible. It's cool though. Yep.
So can I ask you guys, do you think that we will ever be able to trust AI to produce unsupervised finished product? In the sense that the thing that it makes doesn't have to be edited and combed over by a real person before it's presentable.
Well, if you're smart, you don't leave it that way.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. The way that I see it, like, we may have it as a tool, but at the end, it's always going to have to be curated by a human, in my opinion. So I'm curious, like, because the hypothetical Brian's putting forward is you can just ask it to make a product and boom, product is done. Like, do you guys ever think you will be able to rely on it to work unsupervised?
Yeah, I think it's no question. I think it's inevitable. I think the more prominent question or more important question is, will it be during our lifetime? I think it's very possible.
The thing about it is establishing rules, and I feel like there is no rules that have been established for anything like a GPT, and that is precisely why it is plagiarizing and stealing artwork and stealing code, because nobody thought to think like, again, like we're talking about, like, procedurally generated environments. In those situations, they are letting the computer figure out what's going to be in this environment, but they've already told it how the world works. You don't do these certain things. For this, they just let it loose, and that we get those problems that we're currently having. So if you were going to set an AI loose to develop certain things, there has to be a specific set of rules that it needs to follow in order for it to exist, for these things to be able to essentially alleviate, get rid of whatever human oversight is there.
I keep thinking about a point Brian made where he said it's like, yeah, people are going to use ChatGPT to build games. Just tell them exactly what they want the games to do, and it'll make it for them. I'm just imagining grandfather Jeff in the 2050 Video Game Awards, and the developer of the year goes to, and it's just some person that put in on the search chat on ChatGPT to make a game, and
you did an amazing job.
I think it's possible. Like, it's not possible now, but I think.
Whoa!
Oh, damn!
That lightning!
Yeah, man, that's a storm.
Shit!
There's a storm coming, Mr. Wayne.
Damn it! Stole my. You literally be about half a second. Yeah. I think it's definitely possible. It is, again, all the tools are in place. We just need someone to put them together and make them work, which, again, is often the case with most things where everyone's like, the tools are in place. We just need to put them together and make them work. It'd be cool to see how it works out. But again, as Manny said, there'll have to be, it'll need, basically what Manny's talking about is like the training data. Like, it'll need enough training data so that it doesn't spew out nonsense. So hence it needs to be told that, okay, a certain type of buildings exist in certain places, certain type of plants must exist in certain places. Like, you wouldn't expect to see like a oak tree on the top of like Empire State Building, because it makes no sense, Like you expect an oak tree in like Central Park or something, because it's a park, there's trees, nature. That type of rule set. So there'll need to be all this massive, complex training data, but I think if it can use it and it's strict enough that it can actually adhere to those rules, then I definitely think it could.
All right.
Don't kill the humans.
This one will look forward to Grandpa Jeff's video game in 2050, because, I mean, here's the thing. If you put a person at the head and an AI behind them, eventually that AI, in theory, can become as powerful as an entire team. And you only really need one person to be kind of the creative director behind a project. So, yeah, you could see in this timeline, man, you could see some great video games coming from some really small teams. But I don't know what that means for big video game development teams.
All right, let's move on. Last two questions of the night, both sponsored by Mr. E-Man Land. Very generous.
Whoa, who is this?
Who is this guy? Very generous, man. Right, so he is sponsoring a question from Mr. Mob Hits. The first one is, can a new Metal Gear Solid game work without Kojima helming it? I present Metal Gear Survive. But Manny, what are your thoughts for no reason?
I will say this: one of the unfortunate things is that Metal Gear Survive was headed by one of the main game designers of the more recent Metal Gear games under Kojima. I think his name was Sota or something like that, or whatever. That guy was the main guy on those. In fact, a lot of decisions were made by this guy. So I feel like Metal Gear Survive is the victim of multiple things. I think it's Konami saying we need one of those service games, and then they're just saying, all right, we'll just do this, and we'll just do. But I think a Metal Gear game can. A new Metal Gear game without Kojima can exist, but I would also say that whoever does do it will be under the most scrutiny out of any person ever, because it is not a situation where like Miyamoto, where Miyamoto has not worked on a Mario game or a Zelda game in years, so they don't the new they've been able to smoothly transition into the new directors. The guys who've worked underneath him. Whereas in this situation, when the seats changed, when they have a new guy, they have essentially another guy there, it didn't work out. So I think it can be done, but I just think whatever the new Metal Gear game it would almost have to be a back to basics, maybe not a reboot, but essentially like what happened with the Street Fighter franchise. Go back to the things that people remember, or take advantage of the things that people remember from the last time, and really go hard on classic stuff. But again, there was an ending to the Metal Gear. You could do more of a prequel game, the boss game or the Liquid Snake game that Kojima talked about. But again, I feel like in order to get the ball rolling, you got to do it with something that people will recognize. Which I always suggest, if they were to go down the road of making a remake, I would say, it's great. You can remake Metal Gear Solid 1 or the other ones again, but I would say go and take a game from the Metal Gear franchise that was considered a very good game, but didn't have the graphical fidelity. Alternate universe shit. So pretty much the game Metal Gear Ghost Babel was a very good basic Metal Gear game, but it was for Game Boy. So
you talking about the Blue Point treatment?
Yeah, well, not Blue Point. I'm taking like if you wanted to go down a road that people are a new road that is familiar but not that familiar. Remake a game that did well, was critically acclaimed, but not many people know about. Metal Gear Ghost Babel. You make that one, which is essentially sort of an alternate universe version of what happened in Metal Gear Solid. You go to Outer Heaven, you do all the things that you would have done in a Metal Gear game, but it's sort of different. You could go with that, or you could go with the Blue Point route and just essentially just for Metal Gear Solid, 2 and 3, you just pretty much get the old graphics, cover the old graphics with fancy new graphics like they did with Shadow of the Colossus and Demon Souls. But I do think it can be done. But again, like a new game, I don't think you should start off with a new game. I think you should start off with a somewhat older game, and then get people along for the ride, and then come back in and be like, all right, it's the guys that made that thing, and now they're making a totally new experience. So we'll see. But it's again, Kojima. That the biggest thing about Kojima is it is hard to get out of his shadow. He is such a force. Anybody that would ever step in the seat of the Metal Gear franchise would instantly be criticized. So I almost feel like you need to let a little bit more time, sort of pass in order for a new thing to happen.
Yeah, how much time though?
I don't know. I don't know, because there's no precedence for something like this. Somebody, you don't have somebody sort of essentially get kicked out of his company, and essentially, you've never seen that before, right? Usually you just hear, it's like Shinji Mikami, retired, made up a new studio, but it's never really that contentious and like.
Well, what about the God of War dude? Wasn't he bitter still?
No,
like he didn't have rights.
God of War gets a new director like every game, basically.
Yeah, God of like Cory Barlog, not Cory Barlog, David Jaffe. He pretty much walked away from God of War after God of War 1. And they just continuously kept handing down the franchise to somebody who made the previous God of War. So Cory Barlog was like an animation guy who worked on the previous God of War games. So,
and Barlog wasn't Barlog wasn't even the director of the last game.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, Barlog didn't. Yeah, like, and then after that,
God
was
of War
the
never had.
guy.
Yeah, they never had two guys in a row. Yeah.
Yeah, the God of Wars never stay the same.
Yeah,
like that's kind of. I assume by this question, it kind of means like, would it feel like a Kojima experience?
No, it absolutely would not.
And it wouldn't be a Kojima thing, but that's part of the reason why. Like, I feel like that's also, by the way, the guy who was handling Metal Gear Rise, the original Metal Gear Rise, is the same guy who did Metal Gear Survive.
Yeah.
So again, Kojima tried to give him the seat, but he was taking too long, so Kojima just pulled it away from him and gave it to Platinum Games, and they developed it in like 3 years.
Oh, Revengeance?
Yeah, for Revengeance.
Yeah.
You remember, because they announced it, they showed you a little bit of shit, then it disappeared, and then that trailer came up, it was like, yeah, they weren't doing so well, so we decided to give it to Platinum.
Yeah, very interesting.
Here's my take.
I think he was wanting to have somebody. I think he even said it himself, like, and this is also part of the reason why he's always had so many issues walking away from the Metal Gear franchise, is because nobody was able to take over the franchise and really keep it in order. So he tried to walk away on Metal Gear Solid. He walked away on Metal Gear Solid 3. Then he had to come back. Metal Gear Solid 2. He tried. He kept on coming back. For Peace Walker, he again had to step in and get it in order. There's only a few Metal Gear games that have actually come out that are totally not Kojima experiences, like Portable Ops and Ghost Babel and Acid games.
Yeah, Brett.
Can I ask you? I wanted to ask, like, because you got a war kind of thing brought it up. Like, do you think a game can lose its original creator and retain its soul? I'm not even talking about like still being good. I'm saying like not feel like a reinvention. You know what I mean?
I mean, I feel like that sort of happened with the God of War franchise when it moved over to all the other different people from the team. Like the original Cory Barlog one. And
you don't think it changed though?
I think the only thing for God of War 2 is that I feel like that, like, and I think this is Cory's fault, is that he's trying to go too many directions. I mean, granted, God of War 2 is probably you travel to the most places in that one, but it also lost a little bit of what God of War was, which I feel like Stig's version of God of War 3 sort of went back to the old idea of a level that essentially rolls back onto itself. You go through this whole long journey, and then you come back underneath, and then you're like, oh shit, I'm back where it started.
Yeah, but I always felt like God of War was kind of like Spider-Man or Batman. Like, you can tell each iteration of him is kind of through a different lens, which is why you're like, oh, it's Frank Miller's Batman. Kind of thing,
I agree with that. Like, God of War 2 Kratos was different than God of War 1
He was
Kratos.
Angry Man God of War.
Yeah.
He became, I feel like that version of Kratos became the version of Kratos that essentially prevailed through all the following games, where he's just purely angry about everything, and there was no focus to it. Whereas in the first one, it was definitely about the death of his family and all of that stuff.
Yeah, first one was stoic Kratos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was also the one that was the most like the Greek tragedy like he was inspired by. It's like oh who's the cause of your problems? You are. And that aspect has been lost after that. He kind of became like a typical modern hero, like what I'm saying, like a tortured modern hero. He kind of became that in a way in the newer games, but that first one he was like, oh, this is a different take on Odysseus or somebody like that, an arrogant guy that his arrogance is what fucks him over, and it costs him dearly.
But again, like it's still sort of in some cases it still retained what made it God of War. But again, I don't know. Kojima is such a specific character. It almost feel like somebody's trying to play a cover.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's part of the reason why they've been trying to essentially move it away from the idea of Snake and all that stuff. I feel like that's what Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, the original Metal Gear Rising, was supposed to be. Essentially, a new person taking the reins of the Metal Gear franchise, and he doesn't have the weight of Kojima's previous creation, which was Snake himself. We go down the road of Raiden. Yeah.
All right, man. Moving on to the last question of the night. Also, E-Man sponsored question from Tumeke.
What's up, Tumeke?
So this one's a fun one to end the night. What's the one game guaranteed to keep you up all night playing? Essentially, what game do you always find hard to stop playing?
Ooh, it would have to be, for me, at least, like any story-driven games.
He said one game specifically, like it has to be a single title.
One game. Oh man, like again, like I guess I can go with the more recent one. Like Guardians of the Galaxy kept me up for, because what was happening and it was so engaging, and all the different places that you end up going was really cool. So I just wanted the type of game that says, oh my god, what do I see next? The game that essentially, like, I could see, like, again, there's a few reasons why I'm not playing Elden Rings. I'm not into the sort of medieval thing, but I can see myself playing that game for hours because of the thrill of finding something new in that world, the exploration part of it.
Yeah.
So it's like it's story, it's the world. That's the sort of things that sort of keeps me. That's why I kind of like what I don't know what time we're at right now. Maybe like
it's past midnight over here.
It's it's midnight, right? Or it's past midnight. Under normal if I didn't have any work or anything like that, I can't trust myself to play something like, after the show, I'm like, man, I want to play something. But then I know myself, if I do get involved with any of the things that I really want to play, I know I'm going to be up until 6 a.m. in the morning playing because I just get so engaged.
Yeah. This question is a little bit similar to what's the game you keep coming back to, and just like with that question, I don't have anything like that. But with this question specifically, it's I'm fully employed. I can't just be staying up all night playing games. So I always have a hard out at like 11 or so. Like I can't play anymore. I got to get up early to go to work. So I don't really have anything like that. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you see it, there's not any games right now that really compel me to want to play that long anyway, because there's just not a lot I really care for right now. So that's not really an issue. But even with like Elden Ring, for example, that was probably the last game I was really addicted to. I had to fit it to my schedule. I can't be like, I'm going to stay up all night playing this game. It's like, I can't. I got work in the morning, So I don't really have that anymore just because of my life, whatever. But yeah, a game like Elden Ring, like Meg said, would be a good example. It's just because there's just so much to do, so much to explore or whatever. But I can't be like, I'm going to play this game till 3 a.m. I cannot do that anymore.
I do.
Yeah. Well, Brett, you don't have, you have like a Brett schedule, so this is like the perfect question for you then,
Yeah, I'm gonna be real honest. I was distracted by a cat while you were reading the question, and I only have the vague sense of it. Could you read it back to me?
I'm not gonna read the whole thing. But basically, what game can you stay up all night playing?
Okay, cool. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, whatever the fuck I'm into. So I do things a little weird. I do set my own schedule, so that helps. I usually take my first appointments at 2, and I'm very much a nocturnal creature. But as I used to tell my dad, I still put in a solid 8 hours. It's during different times than most people. So while I do stay up late playing video games, it's because that's my video game time. You know, if I'm sleeping till noon or 1 because I got my appointment, I'm working until 3 or 4 sometimes. Sometimes I'm just straight up working till 6, but that's my schedule. So it's not so much I'm gripped by it. It's like, that's when I fucking game, man. Unfortunately, because nobody's playing multiplayer at that point. But the whole addicted to games part thing, I have a weird process. I work like fucking crazy for like 2-3 weeks ahead of time to clear out everything in my schedule and my backlog. I just live, sleep, eat, breathe, work. So that when that thing comes out, I know that I can kind of kick the can down the road a little bit on some of the other stuff and eke out about 2, maybe 3 weeks where I can not phone it in, but like I have all my big project drawings done. I have all the housework kind of caught up. All the errands that you kind of been putting off for a while, all that shit's done. So all I have is Elden Ring. And I'm going to be doing that with Starfield if I could know when it fucking comes out. But yeah, I'll make sure to get ahead on all my projects so that I can basically slack off for a couple weeks and have let a video game in my face. And I find that really important because I'm a firm believer of a lot of times I'm practical, but I do fall to these kind of arty things, these arty notions. And I do think you need to let something in your face, man. You need to let something just grab you by the short hairs and take you and just fucking dive into that shit face first. Embrace it. Love it. Because you know what? You're not going to get this opportunity very fucking long and for very many things. So I just every time I'm like, this game's eating my face, I'm like, I'm going to let it eat my face. There's not many times in life where I am so excited to do something and I get such gratification from fucking doing it. I just need to make sure it doesn't wreck my life around it. So that's why, I prepare. But then I do totally let things eat my face. And I highly advise it, man.
Good
not
stuff.
Doing that shit is being too much of an adult. Let yourself get lost in things from time to time.
Yeah, just make sure you drink plenty of coffee the next day when you fuck up like that.
Oh, no, you prepare for it,
man. Back in the day, man, I was doing that. I'm like, man, I'm ready to come back home for at 7 p.m. After work or 8 p.m. and man, I do a little bit of drawing and then I fucking play some games and sometimes I'd be going to bed at 7 a.m. in the morning, then waking up 2 hours later. I had a 10 o'clock. I was lucky because I had a 10. It wasn't 9 to 5. It was 10 to 7. So yeah, it was like. Nowadays, I really don't think you do that, but I still sometimes push it, man. Sometimes I'm going to bed at 4 a.m. and I got to be up for meetings in the morning. So,
yeah, I want to say I work about 3 to 12-ish, all things considered.
Nice. All right, Adam. What about you? I know your schedule's pretty tight too.
Yeah, but my go-to and all weekend so far, the Division, the first one.
Of course.
Yep, me and a buddy of mine, it's a global event going on, and he's like, yo, let's get these masks. And I never got those. And when I did it last time, so I was like, all right, let's boot it up. And then they had all these issues with Division 2, and the servers crashed for a while because it's a new dev. And anyway, the point is that they were like, oh, we're going to give you guys all this free shit. Right? We're sorry. There's all this stuff. Just go into your stash and your mailbox. You're going to get a bunch of exotic stuff, all kinds of. Just sign in before I think it was 27th. So I had to reinstall that so that way I can get all that stuff. And then my brother's like, "Oh, we should just jump back in that next weekend." I was like, "Yeah, it's the Division for me. I have it on the Steam Deck. I have it on my consoles. It's like whenever I get a chance, that's my go-to. I can just put on some Alice Cooper and just run around and do weird shit in the streets. It just makes me happy. Relaxing. I love it.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank
you. Brian.
Oh, it's a tough one because again, I don't really have that many games that I do this with. But I tend to just do it on a few every now and then. So I guess the last one was Monster Hunter World, where pretty much most nights I was just there, just enjoying the absolute hell out of that one. But now there's no real time sync game at the moment. I don't think they will be. I'm guessing that the next one might be Starfield, depending on how that rolls out. If not, then it's potentially whatever Monster Hunter game comes out after, like World 2, I guess. Yeah, I'm just rolling through games. Like I beat like 4 games so far this year.
Oh, nice.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Funny thing is,
really good.
all of them were not released this year. I think like the 2 and the rest released like in 2012. So, yeah.
You play Rimworld yet, Brian?
No, I'm playing Atomic Heart.
That's fair. I forgot to throw this in. I just passed 350 hours in Rimworld.
Damn.
Really? Only that much?
Yeah. I'm working on it.
Rookie numbers.
Rimworld? What the hell is Rimworld?
It's a colony simulator.
Okay. It's not what you think it is, Adam.
Oh, okay.
I just think of Ringworld, but I think of Rimworld.
Oh no.
Tony would get that one.
Yeah, that's an inside joke. Carlos, do you have any games like this anymore?
No, not anymore. It's sad, but I can't, I haven't pulled out an all-nighter gaming in years.
Carlos, when you became an adult.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have those back in, in me back in the day, but unfortunately, it's just, there's not many games that I, like there's no Mass Effect 2s, there's no Halos. So there's Halos, but they're kind of dead.
They're not the Halos you remember,
Not my Halos.
The dark side, start playing indie games.
But yeah, nope, not for me.
Yeah. All right, good.
Hopefully, I turned into that.
Yeah. Carlos, we turned into those guys, man. It happens.
Yeah.
No, I've turned into that play indie games guy. Like I never thought I'd be that guy, but fuck.
That's good. You that means you have an endless supply of games.
It does, but it just really goes to show I wasn't that guy. I'll be honest, I was never back for the throwback retro games. Everything's in fucking pixels. I just wasn't there for it, man. I feel like AAA's kind of let me down. I just kind of wandered off.
Yeah. I remember, just a quick aside before we wrap up here. I think it was summer 2020, maybe 2021. Again, when I was like, oh, there's no fucking games out right now, and I wasn't reviewing anything, I was like, let me try a bunch of these indie games people recommended. Like Hades and Death's Door, The Ascent, a couple other ones. And I'm like, no, none of these games do it for me.
Most of those games are those people you like, the Devolver Digital people.
I was like, nope, not like. So again, I always go back to the whole thing. Is like people go, oh, Tony, you need to give indie games more of a try. I'm like, I've been playing indie games. I've been reviewing most of the games I've reviewed in my career, 12 years, have been indie games. I play them a lot. And now, thankfully,
you don't like my friend Pedro. You don't like Pedro?
I didn't bother with that shit.
Yeah, Tony.
So real quick, and then you can answer your question. So now I'm in an enviable position where I don't have to review these games anymore. I don't have to play them anymore. It's fantastic. Just play what I want. Go ahead, Brett.
I know you don't like hypotheticals, but I'm gonna try and throw one at you.
Sure.
So, what if they made Unreal Engine so easy to use that indie games looked like AAA games?
Oh yeah, that would probably. I mean, think about it. Senua's Sacrifice, perfect example. That's Unreal Engine 4. That game looks fucking amazing. That's an indie game. You give me indie games to look like that, you're gonna have my attention.
Yeah, because I think it's purely about presentation for it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, well, that's part of it, but also most indie games I've played, the controls are not that great. I'm not saying they're terrible, but you could tell. You could even with Senua's Sacrifice, I was like, oh yeah, it doesn't look indie, but it feels indie, if you know what I mean.
That's my exact kind of why I posed the question. I was like, so it still feels like it was, it still has all the same mechanics, all the same test bed stuff, all the same controls. Everything's the same except now it looks fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
Are you in for indie games now?
I'll give them more of a shot, but here's the thing, right? And what really gets me about indie games, Brett, is actually not the graphics. It's the pretentiousness, you know? That's the main thing. I don't give a fuck if I'm upsetting anybody right now. It is not the graphics. I think most indie games have nice graphics, right? You know, I like stylized stuff. I like that stuff. It's that pretentiousness, you know? I'm like, oh my God, do I have to suffer another fucking quote unquote message from you guys? Give me a great game. Give me a straight game. I don't want the bullshit, because it happens every single time I'm playing any game. Hey, this game's cool. And then some bullshit happens. Like, here we fucking go. Here we go with the bullshit, you know?
So you need to stop getting your indie game recommendations from Kotaku.
Yeah, oh my God. Here we go with the bullshit. And this is the same reason why I don't watch a lot of TV, watch a lot of movies, because the message is always being shoved in my goddamn face. I don't want to deal with it. This is why I've almost gotten to the point where I'm like, if it was made if it was made after 2015, I'm going to be a little suspect about it. Before 2015, I think I might be all right. You know, I'm talking about anything right now, you know, but I'm going off on a rant, but yeah, Brett, the main reason I don't care for indie games, it's not so much the graphics or the simplicity of the gameplay. It is that pretentious bullshit, man. You know, it irks the fuck out of me, you know?
Yeah, there are those. That's why I'm like, you know, I understand, like, if I play one more fucking game where I am a nature spirit trying to clean up the corruption that is inherently left by mankind, I'm gonna fucking shoot myself.
Here we go. Yeah, you know, but it's pixelated.
But enough about the Way of Water.
Yeah.
The gunk was all right. That's one of those. The gunk was all right. You just suck shit up.
No. Adam, I got all the achievements in the gunk. That gunk was not all right.
It was mindless. It was just walk around and suck shit up.
It was good for like the first 2/3, and then like the final third was like when they just like someone just decided like, hey, you know, let's actually like start writing a story where we try and make people care about what's going on in this world.
It was a story. I thought it was just supposed to be relaxing to just clean up the planet.
No, it ends up exactly how Brett just says. You know, it's like, oh, there's this corruption that was because people. It's basically just. It's not gunk, it's oil you're cleaning up. That's basically basically like the short of the story is Shell exists on a planet, and Shell and BP do what Shell and BP do best, which is just oil spill everywhere, and hence the gunk, and that's the storyline. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, so basically I'm just cleaning up oil mess. Okay, brilliant, great, next. But yeah, Tony, I'm totally with you. I'm also quite, again, as much as I love my indie games, there's if you've noticed, there are certain indie games I don't talk about for one big reason, is that they always do the same thing every single time, which is basically just like a hidden story about death in some way, shape or form. And I'm like, I just don't care anymore, because if you're all doing the same thing, I don't care. Like, if the whole story is just pretty much, oh yeah, someone died and now I'm sad. It's like, okay, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, if everyone's doing that, then, again, if you're all doing the same thing, then you're all doing nothing, as far as I'm concerned. So that's why I don't talk about those set of indie games. I tend to talk about the ones where it's like, okay, you play as Jesus, just come back to life. Okay, cool, why not? Makes sense, you know?
Did you play that Jesus game? Did you play it?
I've not, but I'm really interested to actually see how it turns out. But yeah, it's like it's dangerous. You played you travel the stars, because why not? You know, like these games, like Chorus. I just finished that last week. You know, like you literally play as a space bounty hunter who, basically you play as Finn in Star Wars, pretty much. You know, it's like, oh, cool, interesting. You know, it's not just someone died and people are sad.
Yeah.
What's up, Brett? You have a question?
I totally forgot. I was just.
You asking? Did I play something?
Oh yeah. No, I love how weird the indie scene can be. Like, it can be weird, but it can be pretentious, but it can be equally weird. Have you seen the game Sex with Stalin? Because it is exactly what it sounds like.
I heard about that. Like, why? Why does this exist?
I have no fucking
Why
clue.
not, Tony?
I kind of love that it does.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. You know, you want to play, that's cool, but I'm not trying to play anything like that, because that's too fucking weird and goofy, you know?
No, here's the thing. In my opinion, nobody's supposed to play that game. It's just a weird middle finger to the absurdity of a universe that is essentially nihilistic and hates you.
Heh. But hey,
why? Because fuck you. It's kind of beautiful that way.
Yeah. All right. On that cheery note, let's wrap it up, man. Adam, what do you got to plug?
We'll be covering, myself, Richard Billy Jr. and Carlos will be covering The Last of Us, episode 7 that aired tonight. We'll cover it tomorrow, so you can check that out over at thecoalition.com or Coalition Gaming. Do a review and our comparison to the game. See where it's going. This is it. Final 3 episodes.
It's been the final 3 episodes for like the last 5 weeks.
What? No, this is it. What do you mean? It's only 9 episodes.
So how many episodes are left to air?
2 now.
Okay,
well, this one airs those 2.
Okay,
but this is the 3rd one. Today was one of the last 3. That was today, and then we got 2 more weeks.
Today was the DLC, right?
With some of it, yeah.
Okay.
That's from what I understand. I don't know. I didn't see it, but yeah, it sounds like the DLC was spliced in.
Yeah. By the way, real quick, Puffing Cloud, he goes, that's some AAA games like The Last of Us could be pretentious. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I don't really want to mess with that franchise anymore. The pretentiousness is there. When I get a whiff of that shit, man, I'm like, I don't know, man. You know? It doesn't matter if it's indie AAA, I don't like pretentiousness. It bothers the shit out of me. You know,
you need to start playing more sport games. You don't get that in sport games. I've been playing Undisputed. That's another one. Ooh, that's awesome. It's a boxing game. Finally, a legit boxing game that's on PC. Play it on your Steam Deck. What?
Excuse me?
Awesome. Yeah, if you like Fight Night, there you go. We got Fight Night. Known boxers and stuff. Awesome.
All right, man. Good stuff. So we are done here. So make sure you follow Throwdown on Twitch and Twitter. Join the Discord where the conversations and the rumors are always popping. You can also find us on any podcast app on the planet by searching for Throwdown Show. That's 2 words, Throwdown Show. You can also visit Throwdown Show to listen to past episodes. And if you're watching us on YouTube and enjoyed the content, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of when our premieres go live. Links to everything down below. Once again, I was your host, Tony Polanco. And tonight I was joined by Emilio Lopez.
See you next time.
Carlos Romero.
Peace out.
Adam Vale.
Have a good week, everybody.
Brett Murdoch.
Deuces.
And Brian Manjoma.
Pouring one out for Babylon's Fall. Released 3rd of March 2022. It's dead February 27th, 2023.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. All right, people.
And that's, I guess, tomorrow? Today?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, how does time work, Tony?
I don't even know anymore. But also, happy first birthday to Elden Ring, man. Came out the 25th of February.
Where's our DLC?
All right, people. We'll see you on Thursday. Later.
Peace.
Laters. Peace.